Donna Akers had been a public school special education teacher for almost 30 years when she retired in 2020 and decided to launch Ivy Green Academy, an affiliate of the highly regarded and fast-growing Acton Academy microschool network. Not only is Ivy Green the only Acton Academy in all of Mississippi, it is located in the rural town of Pontotoc in an area with almost no other private education options or schooling alternatives for families. In fact, one family drives an hour and a half each way from Memphis, Tennessee, just to attend Ivy Green. What began as a desire to find a better educational environment for her son has turned into a thriving, sought-after, learner-driven microschool that now serves more than 40 children. Far from retiring, Donna is only just getting started. Donna Akers, welcome to the LiberatED podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I just love what you're building. I had a chance to visit you and your Acton Academy microschool just a couple of weeks ago, and just so thrilled with your success in such a short amount of time. I mean, you just keep growing and growing every year. You have plans for expansion, more and more families discovering the Acton model and really appreciating what you're doing at Ivy Green Academy. So I want to get into all of that. But first, let's talk a little bit about your nearly 3 decades as a public school teacher. What was that like, and how did you see public education change over that time?
Well, it was wonderful. I loved my job. I loved being a special education teacher. Um, I taught in every single grade level. I particularly loved the high school, and I enjoyed helping students. But I tell you, things kind of went downhill when my entire day was devoted to getting ready for a test, or redoing a test that we didn't pass, preparing for a test. It was all that we did was working on testing, and it was just it was not fulfilling anymore, because I felt like the things that we were working on were not in line with my values as an educator, and so that's the reason I decided to go ahead and retire.
I think it's really interesting. I don't have some, sort of good quantitative data on this, but anecdotally, it does seem like there is a high proportion, sort of a disproportionate number of the education entrepreneurs and microschool founders that I speak to who are former special education teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wonder what it is about being a special education teacher that may lend itself to being open to these sort of alternative or non-traditional individualized learning environments. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we have to learn how to think outside of the box and come up with new and innovative ways to get our work done. And so maybe that's it. Maybe just kind of having to think outside the box.
Yeah. It's something I think about that, right? That you're so focused on being more creative to solve the needs of your learners and help them with individualized education plans, IEPs. So you have this sense of individualized learning, and then think, well, gee, shouldn't every child have an individualized education plan, right? So there's something to that. I think that would be an interesting area to research further. So you did. Yeah. So you decided then, instead of retiring after such a long and successful career in public education, to instead venture into entrepreneurship. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what made you make that decision.
It was kind of a happy little accident. I was searching for homeschooling curriculum when I ran across Acton Academy. And when I read about it and what it was all about, and the learner-driven model, I fell in love. I watched every video I could get my hands on. I started reading every single book that they recommended, and I was hooked. And I was just like, I'm going to do this. And so I was. It was so nice that I was going to be able to use my education for instead of people, I'd be able to use all my education in my next career. So I was happy about that, and it was a very quick process for me. I decided that I wanted to work on getting my affiliate license or whatever. And I started probably really hard, working on it hard in October. And then by February, I was all in and I had signed my contract. And by the end of the year, that was 20. Started working on it in 19, and then 2020, when the pandemic hit, that's when I was ready to start. And we opened the doors in August of 2020.
And so you said you were searching for homeschooling programs and stumbled upon Acton Academy. And so your initial search was about finding something better for your son. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, well, he is so bright and so eager to learn and loved school and everything. And I just did not want to see him go down the path of my older children. I have 3 older children who just got to where they hated school. I'm a lifelong learner and I love school and I believe in education wholeheartedly. I mean, I've got my doctorate, and so I've gone all the way through. And now I'm of a different thought of college. I have different thoughts on college now, but I did want him to love school and love learning and enjoy going to school every day. And I could see that that was not going to be a part of his future, the way things are going in traditional school. So
Yeah, and he was it first grade when you really?
he was in
second grade. Okay,
and then so he started 3rd grade with us.
great. So great. So you're Googling, sort of alternative education, homeschooling, trying to find out what might be good for him. You stumble upon Acton Academy, go down this rabbit hole. This seems to be more common than not when people discover the Acton model. They can't get enough of it. They devour everything they can about it. And you said that, yes, you were able to launch rather quickly and become an approved affiliate rather quickly, which is a big feat because they get thousands of applications and typically only select a small number of educators to launch an Acton. And you also told me that you're one of the few former educators, former teachers, conventionally trained teachers to open an Acton Academy. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that. What is their sort of aversion to conventional educators running a program like this?
Well, in traditional education, we are taught and trained to, spoon feed all the information to our students. And we're there. They ask us questions, we answer questions, we lecture. That is not what we do at Acton and Ivy Green. We do not do that. We do not answer questions. And so it's very hard for somebody who's been trained that way. It's very hard for me, being a traditional teacher for 30 years, to just all of a sudden stop answering questions. But we don't do that. We guide them to find the answer on their own. So that's how we handle it. We don't lecture. We give challenges and we guide.
Yeah, and you've been able to see that now and running the school and hiring guides to join your school, that you are also hesitant in some cases to hire conventionally trained teachers because of that different perspective, that more top-down approach to education as opposed to bottom-up learner-driven education that Acton's so known for. I wonder if you could talk about that in terms of recruitment.
I have a nurse, a former nurse is one of my guides. I have a former computer person. She did things in the computer world. And then I do have a Montessori teacher. So those are my and then I have another person who was in college, who was working on a degree in education, but had not quite gotten there yet. And it's just it's way easier for them to resist answering questions because they started off with this model, and so they're not tempted as much as I was to answer questions. So. not coming from those backgrounds, business backgrounds is very nice. So we're very business oriented, and um, we the learners run the school. They run their studios and they run the school. So we're just kind of there for, guardrails.
And as you were, trying to read all of this literature, sure you read Laura Sandifer's book, Courage to Grow. Acton Academy was started by Laura and Jeff Sandifer in 2010 and is now quite large and fast growing, probably the fastest growing microschool network globally. They have about 280 affiliate schools in more than 30 states and 25 countries. And what was it that you found most striking about the model? What was it that really captured you?
I love how it's learner driven, and it's really based on helping children to become independent instead of dependent. Traditional schools, they are, the more dependent they are, the more they are rewarded. And here we reward independence and persistence. And those are two main things that we really stress here. I just left a classroom just a second ago where I was trying to, the learners had decided, some of them, the sheepdogs we call them, they're the leaders that kind of rise up. We don't appoint them, they appoint themselves. They decided that they thought there were too many people playing games during core skills, so they were going to do something about it. And so they were banning game playing during core skills. And the other learners said, wait a minute, I'm able to make my goals by playing my games and doing my work. So they made a compelling argument. So that's what we were doing down there. They were showing me their evidence that they were able to do core skills and still make progress towards their goal and get to play games. So that's the kind of thing that we encourage. And we reward.
That is such a striking comment that you made, that the more dependent you are in a conventional school environment, the more rewarded you are. And the more independent you are in an Acton Academy or a similar model, the more rewarded. I mean, they're really sort of opposites. And
Yes.
so I wonder, you're in this rural part of northern Mississippi. The largest city near you is Tupelo, Mississippi, which is about a half an hour away. There's not a lot of private schools in the area, any kind of private education options. And here you come in with this alternative education model that flips education upside down, that puts learners in charge. And yet you have families just gravitating to this model, and you've grown leaps and bounds over the past couple of years. Can you share a little bit about what that growth has looked like?
We started off with 14 learners our first year, and then the second year we had 36, and this year we have 44.
And
So
what is attracting families to this, again, kind of sort of unconventional learning method in a place that has been a desert of, private education options?
Well, they like the fact that their learners are becoming independent. They want them to have these options to be able to make their own decisions about their learning. They want them to be able to get involved with apprenticeships and things. That's a big plus, because the apprenticeship piece is so valuable, even just monetarily for parents, because I know very few people who have gone to college and immediately started taking the courses that they ended up with. Most of the time you kind of flounder around trying to figure out what kind of courses you want to take, and you're wasting money. And the apprenticeship really helps with that. So there's those kind of things, and just their learners being happy to come to school every day. They don't have to make them get out of bed. They're hopping out of bed. They're ready to go. Come on, Mama, let's get in the car. That kind of thing. That makes for family time more enjoyable, because it's awful when you have to make them go to school. They're not stressed out about testing. They're not on bunch of ADHD medication because we don't make them sit down all day. You know, a lot of people have been able to come off of their medication, and that's good for families too and learners.
And so it's catching on mostly through word of mouth, right? That more and more families are interested in what you're doing. Tell us about kind of your growth plans in the short term and long term. I know in the short term, you're thinking about ways of reaching out to families who are far away, but really do want to take advantage of Ivy Green, and then kind of down the road, what your plans are, because you do have mounting demand for your program.
Well, in the short term, we are working out a commuting kind of situation to help. I'm planning on buying a couple of vans so that people from some nearby towns can come in, and until we get, you know, so big that we have to open up another site. And there are several little communities around that we can go in easily, I think, and kind of replicate what we've done in Pontotoc. It's a big need for it. And the biggest barrier, I know you didn't ask about that, but the biggest barrier in our town is money. I would have 100 students right now if I didn't have to charge so much tuition, but I have to pay bills. If we had school vouchers, I would be out. There would not be a limit to how many students I could have.
Yeah, and I know that that's something that, you know, is of interest, of course, nationally. Popularity of school choice programs has skyrocketed, especially over the past couple of years with, I think it's around 30 states now that have school choice programs, private school choice programs that enable education funding to follow students instead of going directly to school systems. And so that's something that sounds like you would support too. Do you ever worry that it would limit your independence and autonomy if you were to take advantage of a program like that?
Well, I would not participate in it if it did. If there were strings attached to it, we would not participate, because that is fundamentally, we want to remain pure in our goals, and I would not be able to accept any interference from the state of Mississippi. That I think that is what people want, is independence. And I think that there's a lot of things going on in the state that are wrong-headed, and I'm just not going to participate in that in my school.
Yeah, and Mississippi does have a tiny school choice program, especially allows children with dyslexia or specific special needs to be able to participate in a private school of their choice. And you do have a couple of those students currently in your Acton Academy, and that hasn't limited your independence or autonomy in any way.
No, they do not. They don't put. We have a couple of things that we have to do for them. We have to show them a pre-test and a post test, which is something I pull off the computer. They don't have to, you know, from their core skills, and I have to do background checks on my people, which I would do anyway. So most of the requirements I would already do anyway. But as far as curriculum and programming, that's where I draw the line.
Yeah. So it does show that we can design school choice programs in such a way that provides that freedom and flexibility for education entrepreneurs and for families to select the kinds of educational environments and curriculum that are best for them without, kind of hampering that innovation, but still have some, sort of common sense accountability, like you're suggesting with background checks and so on, that, as you say, you would likely be doing anyway in order to run a successful microschool or regular school. I think your perspective, Donna, is really interesting, coming from so much time in a conventional classroom to now a more non-traditional classroom, but even more so from teaching an employee and to, education entrepreneur and employer. And I wonder what that's been like for you.
It's very different. I never went to get my administrator's license. I never did that because I did not want to be an administrator. And here I am killing it. That's just part of it. I've always been, a closet entrepreneur. I always thought I'm going to own a business someday. And I always have that kind of independent thinking in my life. So it was not a stretch for me to do this. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are just like, oh, here's another idea she's got, and but this one it's very neat to see an idea in your head come out and see it in front of you and be able to appreciate that you're able to accomplish something like this. And it's very fulfilling.
It should be fulfilling. I mean, you've had such tremendous growth in just a couple of years. You've talked about taking over the rest of the sort of commercial space that you're in. I think you said you're flanked by a beauty salon and a healthcare company. So your thoughts, at least initially, would be to take over those.
Yes.
Do you think at some point you're no longer really a micro school, that you would be, kind of what we would think of as a larger school? Do you have thoughts about creating additional micro schools and so on?
Yes, we will never get really huge. I mean, I'll limit probably 180, 200 tops. And that would give us a couple of elementary classes and a couple of middle school classes to feed to the high school class. So, and that's the reason we do that. In order to have a good, robust launch pad, is what we call our high school, we have to have a couple of classes to feed into it, because students, learners go other places, in high school. And we have in Mississippi, we have a MS, which is a Mississippi School for Math and Science. And there's a couple of other options that they have that are statewide options that they go to, but in the high school. But we're working on that. We're working on getting a second elementary school for next year, especially.
That's great to build up more of those high school options in addition to the elementary school options too. So great to see. So, if there's another teacher listening who's maybe been thinking about striking out on their own as an education entrepreneur or a micro school founder, what would you say to them?
I would encourage them to do it. Just, write down your goals, break it down step by step, and step out and do it. And you will not regret it. You start off small, and you can do it. It's not easy, but it is very doable. And most things that are worthwhile are not easy. So I say go for it. Go and open it in your home if you can't find a place. You can do it in your home.
And so we've seen so much growth in micro schools over the past couple of years of education disruption. Obviously, Acton Academy has been around since 2010. And so it was leading the way even before the disruption since COVID-19 in 2020. So I wonder, do you think that micro schools in general are going to continue to be an education trend that we'll see? And then more specifically, do you see learner-driven education as also gaining popularity?
Oh, yes, both.
To both.
I definitely see that because as parents see that they have more options, they are going to be wanting to take those options. And the learner-driven model, when people find out, and as our students age out and graduate, they're going to see how successful they are in life. And it's really going to explode. I see my students opening up schools. I can see them doing that. I can see it very easily because they believe in it. They understand. They see how they are able to have freedom in their choice and make their own decisions about their learning, and how valuable it is. So I think it's just going to grow.
And so in Mississippi, we mentioned you don't have robust school choice policies, at least not yet, but it is very friendly toward entrepreneurs and small business owners. There's few regulations compared to a lot of other states. It's relatively easy, for example, to homeschool in Mississippi. It's relatively easy to start a private school in Mississippi. And so, what do you see then specifically in Mississippi over the next 10 years with regard to education, innovation, entrepreneurship, these new learning models? What will the state's education look like a decade from now?
Well, I really hope that we get the vouchers. I hope that is something that I want to work on personally. Um, I want to help educate our legislators on the value of it. And I think that once they find out, what these other states are able to do with theirs and what we're trying to do in our microschools across the state, I think that they're going to get on board. I see an explosion of microschools because what we're doing is we're taking it back into the community the way it used to be before we started public schools. Back, when our country was founded, each community had their own school. And that's where we're going back to. And so communities have control. Parents have control over what goes on in their school through their choice of where they go to school. So where they send their students. So I definitely see it exploding across the nation.
Yeah, so you see this proliferation of these local, small, decentralized education models like Ivy Green Academy sprouting. I see that too. I hope that the momentum continues, and I think that it will. And I also think that the support that we're seeing for these models is really encouraging. I know you mentioned that you are a recipient of a VELA Education Fund microgrant, and VELA is a nonprofit philanthropic organization that supports education entrepreneurs like you across all kinds of different educational philosophies and models, but really wants to encourage the growth of these non-traditional and often very student-centered models of learning. And then in Mississippi, there's the Embark, which is a project of Empower Mississippi, one of the state level think tanks that really focuses on accelerating and incubating microschools and other kinds of new school starts and education models there. I wonder what you think about this kind of larger community of education entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs in Mississippi and elsewhere that you've been able to connect with.
Well, I think it's wonderful. I think it is so nice to be able to connect with other people who are like-minded and have gone through the same things that you've gone through and can help you, guide you in different questions. There's so many things that you just don't think about. And if you have a mentor or someone who's going through it at the same time you are to bounce ideas off of, it is very handy. And it makes you feel better to know you're just not going through it by yourself. And so I think that we need to support each other. There are so many students in Mississippi. We do not need to compete with each other. We need to support each other. And there's plenty of students to go around for all our schools that we need. So I think it's a good thing. And I've enjoyed the support I've gotten from Acton Academy. And it has been very helpful. I mean, every single day I get emails and I get to look on the forum and get help. And I want to be a part of that kind of help for other people in Mississippi too.
Well, it was so great to visit Ivy Green Academy and to see those smiling faces, see these kids who are just thrilled to be there, don't want to leave at the end of the day, happy to be engaged with their peers and their guides, and really do take charge of their own learning, their own education. It's really remarkable to see. So Donna, if my listeners want to connect with you and follow your work at Ivy Green Academy, what is the best way for them to do that?
They can visit our website, ivygreenacademy.org, and they can connect with me. My phone number's on there, my email. There's a way to get in touch with me there. That's the best way. And we have videos up, and also we're on Facebook. Ivy Green Academy on Facebook is a good way to they could message me there too. But yes, I'm always here and I always answer my phone, and I'm always happy to help other people.
Ah, so great. So great to see what you're building there, and best wishes to you for the future success of Ivy Green Academy. Donna Akers, thank you again for being on the LiberatED podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.